much abused.
If it were a choice at the end of the day between Brexit and Scotland remaining part of the UK, what would you choose?
Me personally, I think we should leave the EU full stop. I think we're better on our own.
Would your attitude be, well, that's a price worth paying for Brexit?
I'd hesitate to say anything like jog on, but that would be my first thought.
Jog on, did you say?
Yes, I did.
To the Scots.
Well, again, I mean, you know, if they feel that's the best position for them as a nation, as a country, then probably that's the best thing they could do.
This is a common theme I'm noticing, mainly coming from the Scottish Government, funnily enough, but in this case it's the BBC. English nationalism, jog on Scotland. This concept that the English are prepared to shaft Scotland or put two fingers up at the Union in favour of leaving the European Union. And it's all under the premise that a no-deal Brexit or leaving the European Union would by default mean Scotland would leave the Union in favour of remaining in the EU. And that's not necessarily the case. That's, I'm sorry to say, buying a bit too much into the SNP's fairy tale narrative, the alternate reality that they tend to find themselves in on a day-to-day basis. Realistically, it would be a case of they'd be prepared to risk a referendum so that they could leave the European Union. But that referendum isn't a guarantee to leave in terms of Scotland in favour of remaining in the European Union. So this concept keeps getting thrown about the place that the English are so desperate to leave the EU they're prepared to break up the Union. But the Union would only break up if the Scottish decided in a referendum to stay in the EU. And quite frankly, I'm not entirely convinced that the SNP's little manipulation tactics are working to the best of their abilities. Nonetheless, that leaves me on to Beta Blackford yet again. Yesterday, Ian Blackford was on the Sunday Politics show. I think that's what it's called. Talking to no end about all these supposed plans that they've all got as a means to stop a no-deal Brexit from entering the forefront. And we all know if they were able to obtain their end goal by October the 31st, it would probably lead to Brexit being completely and utterly fucked in its entirety, which we all know that's kind of what they want. Well, at the very least, that's what I've been saying, that that's what the SNP have been trying to do for the best part of 3 years. You know, on the Monday and the Tuesday they'll spout off independence rhetoric and then they'll spend the rest of the week completely contradicting themselves, and this is no different. It was only fucking yesterday he was spouting off, it was only yesterday that he was on the TV spouting off incessant insufferable BS with a proverbial fear porn hysteria and so on and so forth in order to try and justify the fact that he's a fat little undemocratic wanker. And here we are a day later, and he's peddling pish about independence again. You know, these people are really, it begs belief. It really, they're trying to keep both parties sweet, theoretically. You know, the staunch Remainers and their independent supporters. I mean, they're bound to be growing rather uneasy, surely. You know, 3 years ago now, Sturgeon said, vote Remain if you want your independence. You know, 3 years later, and what we got? So, I mean, how can you take these people seriously? This is what I want to know. Because at the end of the day, if they were not able to scupper Brexit and then decide that they're going to have to try their damnedest to rely on a second independence referendum, you know full well they're going to say whatever they can to convince as many people as possible. Therefore, the things that they may say during that campaign, how do you know they're sincere? Because there couldn't have been that much of an issue to begin with, because they would have been quite content staying part of the UK if it meant Brexit was stopped. So anything that they say as a means to convince people to vote for independence, you have to question the sincerity of it. Well, I do anyway. So it says down here, I believe there's a chance we can prevent the Tories from taking us off that cliff edge, and that must be the priority. But in Scotland we must ask ourselves if this is really the height of our ambition. Just say your top priority pays off, and Brexit is inevitably fucked as a result of. Then there is no mandate for you to call upon, therefore this is pointless talking about. But again, we all know that you have to keep both parties interested for the time being. How much longer are we willing to put up with the governments we didn't elect, forcing damaging policies on us? How much yes in favour of an EU Commission that we didn't elect? Why are we wasting so much energy as a nation mitigating damage done to us when we could be busy fulfilling our potential with independence? Oh, independence! Independence again! So the top priority is to stop a cliff edge Brexit, therefore kind of rendering the whole process obsolete. But here we are again, a paragraph later, peddling pish about independence. Remind me again how you would be able to get your independence if Brexit was stopped, Ian. You know, you can't have it both ways. You can't in one breath advocate for policies to stop Brexit or at the very least hinder the process and make it as hard as possible, then the next day or the next then come away with pish about independence, knowing full well that you can't have independence. Knowing full well you can't act upon your mandate for independence unless Brexit actually occurs. So explain to me why you're spending all of your waking moments trying your damnedest to stop Brexit. It makes no sense. It contradicts itself in its entirety, unless of course independence is the afterthought, the plan B, the get out clause, so to speak. You want to stop Brexit, you wish to remain in the European Union, no matter the fucking cost. That's pretty apparent. A lot I would really like to say about the SNP and these so-called Scottish politicians, but the least said the better, before I say something that I may very well come to regret later down the line. But one thing is abundantly clear for all who wish to see. These people do not have your interests at heart. These people are selling your country down the river and you can't even see it. You know what you can do with your progression, Blackford. You know what you can do with your inclusion, Sturgeon. You know what you can do with your diversity, Mary Black. I am so sick of these cancerous fraudsters. Peace.